For the last 3 months, a single brutal metric dominated the where wins meet conversation: player retention. Following a massive global launch in November 2025 that captured nearly 250,000 concurrent players, the operational cadence ground to a devastating halt. Lacking the systemic friction required to hold a daily audience, behavioral habits fractured and daily logins snapped. The active player base plummeted by 72%, bleeding out to roughly 37,000 users. When the studio finally broke their silence to announce the Hexi expansion, citing localization challenges for the agonizing drought, the community responded with conditioned live service skepticism. We tallied the 3 new maps, the 11 bosses, and the 20 subregions. We debated whether a staggered 28-day release schedule could generate enough momentum to reverse the collapse. Yet, by remaining hyper-fixated on patch note arithmetic, the broader discourse missed the structural soul of this expansion. Where Winds Meet is executing a profound aesthetic pivot, replacing its foundational identity with a level of ambition rarely attempted in the action RPG space. To grasp the magnitude of this shift, you have to examine the base game. Qinghe and Kaifeng were relentlessly, deliberately grounded. Set against the 5 Dynasties and 10 Kingdoms period, one of the most violently turbulent and politically fractured eras in Chinese history, the game operated just as much as a factional survival simulator as it did an action RPG. The mud was real. The political betrayals were visceral. The cynical realpolitik of a collapsing state pressed against you at every turn, refusing to romanticize the Jianghu. Where Winds Meet was brutally honest about the cost of martial arts survival, in ways that most wuxia media deliberately avoids. Hershey discards that suffocating realism entirely. What replaces it is something classical Chinese artistic tradition has a specific name for: xie yi. This painting philosophy prioritizes capturing the emotional resonance of a subject over its literal form, favoring loose brushstrokes and the feeling beneath the image over precise historical outlines. Hershey applies this exact philosophy to world design. It manifests a surrealist, emotionally heightened dreamscape, representing what the Tang Dynasty Hershey corridor felt like to the people dying inside it. Crumbling walls suspend mid-air. Ruins drift like ghosts through the desert silt. Camels carry golden incense burners, and poplar trees lean uniformly in a single direction toward Chang'an, embedding a profound geographical longing directly into the environment's geometry. This represents a monumental shift from grounded political realism to playable mythology. I spent roughly 5 hours navigating the preview build's available main and side quests, and I want to be entirely transparent about the volume. Within that window, I completed what appeared to be the full available preview content. If this represents the entirety of the launch narrative pacing, the window is undeniably compact. The 3-month drip feed will clearly rely heavily on open-world exploration, collection tracks, and dynamic events to sustain engagement. Whether that pacing holds across the full operational run remains a key question going into launch. However, within those 5 hours, the immersion was absolute. Hershey crosses historical fantasy with surrealism to recount the catastrophic overnight implosion of a Golden Age empire, viewed entirely from the bottom. It ignores the throne rooms and war councils, framing the stranded frontier soldiers and isolated commoners as the actual subjects of history. Through deceptively simple themes of water scarcity, seed traders, Silk Road merchants, and the institutional absurdity of following orders from a vanished capital, Hershey repeatedly forces a single question. When the empire goes silent and the chain of command dissolves, who are you loyal to? The answer arrives quietly through these commoner stories. You are loyal to the person standing next to you. Just humans. Just people. The delivery of this narrative occasionally fluctuates. Stunning, high-production cutscene moments occasionally give way to more functional, traditional MMO-style quest interactions. But the localization unequivocally works. The tone lands. The bridge stands.
He always said a person's life is like water. Once spilled, it can't be taken back. He was born here because heaven never meant for him to survive.
The cultural translation the community deeply worried about holds immense weight. Naturally, bringing historical context regarding the Angshi army and Li Bai's poetry deepens the resonance exponentially. I cannot separate my own context from the experience, but the foundational atmosphere undeniably succeeds. Understanding the depth of this atmosphere completely reframes the localization delay. Everstone Studio publicly admitted that Hershey contains a massive volume of culturally dense narrative that fiercely resists direct translation. The expansion opens with Li Bai's most famous poem on homesickness, a verse Chinese children internalize long before comprehending its gravity. The moon in that poem transcends being a celestial body. It acts as the shared sky between a stranded man and everyone he loves, vibrating with 1,000 years of exiles looking upward. Exporting that specific emotional frequency is a civilizational transmission problem. Attempting to translate the cellular memory of a culture's relationship with isolation and grief requires a profound ontological rebuild. You cannot rush the translation of a cultural dream without hollowing out its entire reason for existing. Stylistically, Hershey channels the mythic, dream-logic environmental storytelling of Elden Ring. It trusts the player to internalize the vast, tragic isolation of the edge of the known world, without relying on heavy-handed exposition. The art direction renders the inherently desolate Gobi Desert into a visually arresting, impossible landscape. Anchoring this surrealism is a genuinely brilliant musical score, built around a single thematic core. The composers transform one fundamental melody across an enormous range of emotional registers: triumphant, tranquil, raging, mournful, creating a profound sense of coherence that keeps you anchored in the same dream, even as the emotional temperature wildly shifts. This surrealism physically bleeds into the mechanical design. The new cosmic reversal ability allows you to rewind time, manipulating ruined structures through temporal states to solve spatial puzzles. Thematically, this is devastating. Returning ruins to their former glory is exactly what every stranded soldier on that frontier was waiting for. You are literally performing the fantasy of restoring the empire with your own hands, proving that the mechanic itself is the emotion. The boss encounters weaponize this same nightmare logic. The aging general forces a desperate battle against time itself, reversing the battlefield to resurrect his slaughtered army as history physically refuses to stay buried. The wandering arc warps spatial reality, demanding the structural deconstruction of a flying leviathan across a moving, unmoored arena. Most profoundly, the moon-gazing maiden strips away all your optimized martial arts skills, forcing reliance on a basic, nameless thundersword and pure deflection. It is the mechanical realization of the expansion's central thesis. You cannot outstat grief. When the Empire forgets your name and strips your identity, only your fundamental mastery remains. The expanded arsenal carries identical philosophical weight. The spring dreamscape umbrella demands surgical rhythm, functioning as an intricate, mournful dance embedded within the chaos. Its natural counterpart, the fleeting cloud's rope dart, provides flowing, chaotic, wide-arc pressure. April's hangblade grounds this arsenal with cold, historical specificity, modeled directly on excavated Tang Dynasty ring pommel swords to serve as the stark steel reality anchoring the dream. This thematic journey paces itself deliberately across 3 entirely free chapters. Jade Gate Pass launches March 6th, establishing the desolate western threshold where the Angshi army watched the road home vanish, yet kept their banners flying. Liangzhou arrives in April alongside the Hangblade, unveiling a snow-swept city, masking dark, transforming currents beneath a peaceful surface. Qinchuan closes the expansion in May, delivering dynamic seasonal cycling across a single map. Far beyond a live service visual novelty, this seasonal shifting acts as the ultimate thematic statement, letting the environment itself mirror the unstoppable passage of time and the inevitability of impermanence. Deploying this massive narrative through a structured 28-day release cycle is standard live service triage. It prevents hyper-engaged players from consuming a quarter's worth of development in a single weekend, attempting to replace a volatile spike and drought cycle with a mathematically sustained engagement window. But as I noted earlier, whether that mechanical drip feed actually holds its balance across the full 3-month run remains the primary unknown of this launch. Crucially, however, every map, story chapter, quest line, and boss is entirely free. In a market dominated by aggressive $40 expansions and expiring battle passes, Everstone is monetizing strictly through cosmetics. They are making a definitive, creative declaration. They intend to earn player loyalty through the profound quality of their content, rather than extracting it through financial obligation. Which brings us to a quick word from today's sponsor, Enjoy GM. If you're looking to buy Echo Jade for Where Winds Meet, Enjoy GM supports the game and offers better prices than standard top-up rates. They operate across regional markets and pass those savings directly to you. Head to the site, enter your UID, pick your amount and pay. No account login, nothing sensitive shared. 24/7 human support is available. Link in the description. Thanks to Enjoy GM for supporting the channel. Where Winds Meet always possessed the mechanical depth to succeed. Hersi proves the studio possesses the narrative elasticity to mature the action RPG genre. They abandoned cynical realism for surrealist romantic mythology. They delayed their pipeline to protect a cultural dream. They built bosses around nightmare logic, centered their magnum opus on the forgotten commoners of a collapsing empire, and gave all of it away for free. Live service games are fundamentally designed to make us feel immortal, to promise that if we grind long enough, our empires will last forever. Hersi exists to remind us that all empires fall. It strips away the myth of the conquering hero, replacing it with the quiet, shared grief of a stranded army. It asks us to stand at the very edge of the known world, watching an era collapse, and choosing to keep the banner flying anyway. Not out of loyalty to a throne that has already forgotten their names, but out of loyalty to the person standing next to them. It leaves us with 1,000 ghosts looking up at the exact same moon, dreaming of a Chang'an that no longer exists. The illusion of the power fantasy has been broken. What remains is an elegy. The desert is waiting. Endless, desolate, tragic, beautiful.